changing who I am. I'm making a new plan, rearranging my life, and I won't look back ever again.
You ain't see me activated. You better hope that you never see me agitated. I think about my actions, plan them out, evaluated. That's how I end up on the top, man, I'm calculated. My mind's a weapon, my body is the engine. I'm never second guessing, I just do what I was destined. Cause I feel I got the blessing, persistence and obsession. That's how you keep progressing, I already learned that lesson, yeah.
I'm changing who I am. I'm making a new plan, rearranging my life, and I won't look back ever again. You can't stop what's moving. You can't stop what's moving. I'm changing my life, and I won't look back ever again.
No fear, see clear, you deserve to be great. I know it feels like things get in your way. Push through those walls and the others will fall. Sit up, stand tall, you can get through it all. I need some energy, anxiety's no friend to me. I have a short memory, I don't really remember things. That's how I move on, that's how I stay strong. A new day's on, I'll keep moving right along. And I feel like the pain in the past, it needs to stay in the past. You gotta take off your cast. I wanna feel like I'm a new person. I wanna have clear vision and purpose. And I feel like the pain shouldn't last. If you can move on and past the things that make you feel bad, and you can change in your brain, I'm certain. I've done it before, and man, I'm not perfect.
I'm changing who I am. I'm making a new plan, rearranging my life, and I won't look back ever again. You can't stop what's moving. You can't stop what's moving. I'm changing my life, and I won't look back ever again.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go to work, cause my boss is a jerk, and I'm not even that paid. I need a change in my life, cause I don't feel alive, and there's nothing that makes me happy. Hold my beer for a minute, I'm about to quit my job, cash in for a ticket. I'm going on a trip and I don't plan to visit. I'm gonna stay there till I feel like I'm winning, and this is just the beginning. I need a big change, help me feel like living. I need a big swing, home runs I'm hitting, and I'll never look back, moving on till I get it all.
And we all got dreams, we all want things, but what you gonna do for it? How you gonna move for it? What you gonna be? And do you believe you can do anything? But what you gonna do for it? How you gonna move for it? What you gonna be?
Strife, my right to fight, to die on. And this is my game to play, to claim a brand new name, And I ain't gonna lie to you, I'm a bit nervous that I might screw everything up that I've ever done. But what's the point of living if you ain't having fun? I guess I'll try this, try that, might miss, gotta find what I'm good at. I guess I look here, look there, over where am I scared, where am I at? I gotta make it in this life, whatever makes me happy, know I'm doing things right. Sipping in the summer on a goose and Sprite, or find a nightclub for the end of the night,
And we all got dreams, we all want things, but what you gonna do for it? How you gonna move for it? What you gonna be? And do you believe we can do anything? But what you gonna do for it? How you gonna move for it? What you gonna be? feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, no, this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, some losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip, you choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
Yeah. There's no mercy in this world, just hunger-thirsty persons in different versions. Each new update, that shit worsens. Why? Pull back the curtain and you'll see the different vermin. We all have different burdens that all seem to cause disturbance. Yo, so do me a favor, don't treat me like a neighbor. Don't need the different flavors of your problems just to savor. I've got my own issues, I need a comb to get through. Don't need to groan with you, just go get your own tissue.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
That's it, the end of the song. Next time you'll sing along. Trust me, there's nothing wrong. I just need to carry on, cause society's a myth put there to make you sit. Listen to what they give. Don't ask questions, shut your lid. Yeah, don't ask questions, shut your lid. I need to run away from this and go get off the grid.
The early 20th century saw the outbreak of some of the deadliest conflicts in history. World wars between global powers that left unimaginable suffering in their wake. Despite this, the period from the end of World War II to the present has been called the Long Peace, a somewhat ironic moniker given what it took to achieve that peace. For nuclear scientists and physicists in the early 20th century, years of theorizing and research culminated on July 16, 1945, in the Trinity test, when scientists from the Manhattan Project detonated the world's first nuclear device in New Mexico. That moment has been called the dawn of the atomic age. The unsuspecting civilians that would be contaminated with fallout from the Trinity test, now called downwinders, made clear that this would be an age defined not only by the promise of nuclear technology, but also its devastation, which would be fully demonstrated only a few weeks later. The detonation of atomic bombs over Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan in 1945 killed between 110 and 210,000 people. In the aftermath of that destruction, Albert Einstein, J. Robert Oppenheimer, and Manhattan Project scientists and engineers created the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists, an organization meant to warn and educate the public about the potential harm of their creation. The public's imagination during the post-war period would be filled with visions of nuclear-powered transportation and endless supplies of energy.
A giant of limitless power at man's command.
But the inventors of the technology behind the atomic bomb were more concerned about the prospect of an arms race and worldwide nuclear war.
There is no denying that since that moment, the shadow of the atom bomb has been across all our lives.
Over its more than 75-year history, the Bulletin has monitored existential threats to humanity and communicated insights to the public through its magazine, its website, its events, and the Doomsday Clock, which visualizes humanity's metaphorical proximity to global catastrophe. Martil Langsdorff, an artist married to a Manhattan Project engineer, created the Doomsday Clock in 1947 as the first cover image for the Bulletin's magazine. It was initially set at 7 minutes to midnight. The clock first moved in 1949, when Bulletin editor Eugene Rabinowitch decided to move the minute hand forward to 3 minutes to midnight, in response to the Soviet Union testing its first nuclear weapon, years ahead of when many in the US government thought possible. In all, the clock has moved 25 times, first as dictated by Rabinowitch, and later as set by the Bulletin's Science and Security Board. The clock has moved closer and further away in response to a variety of technological and diplomatic events. At the end of the Cold War and the signing of the Nuclear START Treaty, the Doomsday Clock moved the furthest from midnight it's ever been, 17 minutes to midnight, highlighting humanity's potential to prioritize peace and move back the clock. Today, the Doomsday Clock represents the judgment of leading science and security experts about the threat to human existence with a focus on man-made threats, nuclear risk, climate change, and new disruptive technologies like artificial intelligence and new biotechnology. The clock is watched closely by scientists and policymakers, but it has also been a prominent feature in pop culture since its emergence. It has been a thematic device in feature films like Doctor Strangelove, the Jurassic World series, and Justice League. It's been described in popular songs by artists like The Who, Smashing Pumpkins, and Bright Eyes. It's been a motif of video games like Rise of Nations, books like The Imposter, the fantasy novel Wielding a Red Sword, and comic books like Watchmen. Throughout its history, the Doomsday Clock has helped focus global attention on the gravest threats to the planet. More than 75 years since it was first introduced, the clock remains an enduring symbol of the promise and peril of humanity's technological prowess.
Last year, the Doomsday Clock was moved for the 25th time to 90 seconds to midnight, the closest it has ever been, citing the conflict in Ukraine not only as a potential point of nuclear escalation, but the war's effects in undermining global efforts to combat climate change, disinformation, and the alarm it raised about biological and chemical warfare. The bulletin urged action from the world's leaders on the multitude of threats facing the planet. As UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said last year, the Doomsday Clock is a global alarm clock. Have leaders acted with urgency? The bulletin has been watching. Again, our Science and Security Board met and asked two important questions. Is humanity safer or at greater risk this year compared to last year? And is humanity safer or at greater risk this year compared to the more than 75 years we have been asking the question? In 2023, trends continue to point ominously towards global catastrophe. The war in Ukraine poses an ever-present risk of nuclear escalation, and the October 7 attack in Israel and war in Gaza provides further illustration of the horrors of modern war, even without nuclear escalation. The countries with nuclear weapons are engaged in modernization programs that threaten to create a new nuclear arms race. Earth experienced its hottest year on record, and massive floods, fires, and other climate-related disasters have taken root. And lack of action on climate change threatens billions of lives and livelihoods. Biological research aimed at preventing future pandemics has proven useful, but also presents the risk of causing one. And recent advances in artificial intelligence raise a variety of questions about how to control a technology that could improve or threaten civilization in countless ways. Last year, we expressed amplified concern by moving the clock to 90 seconds to midnight, the closest to global catastrophe it has ever been. The risks of last year continue with unabated ferocity and continue to shape this year. Today, we once again set the doomsday clock to express a continuing and unprecedented level of risk. It is 90 seconds to midnight. Hello, I'm Rachel Bronson, President and CEO of the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists. Today I'm joined by members of the Bulletin Science and Security Board, those who helped set the doomsday clock. Our goal is to provide some insight into why we have set the clock at 90 seconds to midnight. And if you'd like to know more, we've released a statement today that goes into greater depth and can be found at our website at thebulletin.org. After our brief discussion, we will be turning to renowned science educator Bill Nye and UChicago professor Daniel Holtz, the chair of the Bulletin Science and Security Board. But before we do that, I'm joined today by Asha George, Executive Director of the Bipartisan Commission on Biodefense, Princeton Professor Alex Glaser, and Stanford Senior Researcher Herb Lin. Joining us from India is Professor Ambush Sagar, who helps lead the Indian Institute for Technology in Delhi. So let's dive in. Alex, there are two key messages in our statement. And they are, one, that 90 seconds to midnight is profoundly unstable and must not engender complacency. And two, the advancement of technology is quickening and outpacing our ability to govern them. But let's pull back the curtain for our audience today and talk through why we've said it. So Alex, can you summarize the highlights, or I guess the lowlights, of the current nuclear landscape?
Thank you, Rachel. When we set the clock last year, there were major concerns that nuclear weapons could be used in Ukraine. And today's clock setting was still overshadowed by the war in Ukraine, but also the war in Gaza, which has caused enormous human suffering and could lead to a broader conflict in the region involving several nuclear weapon states and regional powers. So it's really against this backdrop that we're facing a crisis in nuclear arms control, and I could go into great detail, but let me highlight perhaps just two aspects. First is that traditional nuclear arms control really has come to an end for now. Russia withdrew or suspended the New START Treaty, withdrew its ratification from the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, which the United States, of course, never ratified to begin with. But perhaps more importantly, that's the second point. Many weapon states are currently pursuing extensive modernization and expansion programs that will really, for the first time since the end of the Cold War, essentially providing the infrastructure that could last until 2100. China is increasing its nuclear arsenal, now standing at 500 nuclear weapons. And for the first time, at least in my adult life, there's now talk in Washington that the US nuclear arsenal will have to increase also in order to match the arsenals of Russia and China combined. So in many ways, we're setting ourselves up for a three-way arms race, which is unprecedented and quite concerning. So the picture is quite bleak on the nuclear side this year.
Yeah, there's a lot that we'll come back to. Ambuj, I'd like to go to you now. Maybe you can set the scene for us on climate, which has had a tough year as well.
Sure, happy to do so. On climate, the story has really been a mixed story. There's been a fair amount of bad news for sure, but there's also some good news. I think, as already mentioned, 2023 was the hottest year on record, and a range of extreme events across the world made more likely by climate change. Global greenhouse gas emissions continue to rise. Global and North Atlantic sea surface temperatures broke records. Antarctic ice was at lowest levels, and I could go on, but I think one gets the picture. I do want to note that not everyone is obviously affected equally by this, and maybe we'll talk about this a little bit later. Also, unfortunately, the policies and pledges in place to address climate change do not allow us, at least as of now, to meet the Paris Climate Agreement goals. Having said that, there is some good news. We are moving in the right direction, even if not as fast as one would like. Renewables are dominating new energy deployment. Last year, there was $1.7 trillion invested in clean energy. At the climate COP in Dubai a few months ago, 2 months ago, 120 countries representing a significant fraction of the world's GDP, half of the world's GDP, agreed to triple the renewable energy deployment by 2030 and double energy efficiency. All good news, moving in the right direction. The International Energy Agency believes that fossil fuels will peak by 2030. So on balance, as I said earlier, we're moving in the right direction, but not as fast or as deeply as one would like.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Herb, this past year, artificial intelligence was really kind of on the table in new disruptive technologies. We spent some time really talking through it in our deliberations. Do you want to kind of set the landscape for how we should be thinking about new disruptive technologies, maybe with a frame around AI?
Sure. We debated whether AI was going to be an existential threat to humanity. It turns out there is debate about that, large amount of debate in the community, even among experts. Regardless of whether you believe that it is or is not going to be an existential threat, it's clear that it's a disruptive technology, and it's going to, it has disrupted many segments of society already. AI has lots of potential for magnifying corruption in the information environment and making the disinformation problem worse. And that's really bad because the threat multiplier effect means that we're not going to be able to solve other hard problems like nuclear war and climate change. And so that's really tough. That makes solving those problems much harder. And we talked about the question about AI and is it going to pose an existential threat. I have to note that any physical threat to existence from AI has to come because somebody chose to hook AI up to the physical world, some physical system. And it's true, like that if you make a bad human choice, like connecting ChatGPT to the nuclear launch system or something like that, yes, that's an existential threat, but that's a nuclear threat. That's not an AI threat.
And Asha, I wanted you to follow her because I know we talk in the biosecurity, even biosafety, but the biosecurity space, there's a lot of thinking about its connection with AI in addition to how it affects the current landscape as well. So do you want to help broaden that out?
Sure. Well, one thing I want to say is because of what happened last year and the discussions that started to occur, there's this sense that AI just suddenly popped up, but it didn't. We've had a pretty long tail on this one, and we've seen it improve and improve and improve, which it's supposed to do. It's AI, it's supposed to. But last year we heard more discussion about AI and its application in terms of genetic engineering, but also in terms of developing biological weapons, posing questions that would allow a person without a whole lot of technical expertise to obtain biological agents, put together a biological weapon, and and so forth. And there are also the applications to facilities. As Herb said, you can hook GPT up to something and make those two systems work together. Now suddenly you can access a facility or figure out how a facility works too, and that has pretty big implications for laboratory biosafety and biosecurity.
So one of the things at the Bulletin that we spend a lot of time thinking about is not only the advancement of the technology, but how it's governed, right? That technologies have huge potentials, but also huge risk. And if we can manage those risks, we can benefit from its potentials. There's actually been some pretty interesting governance efforts. Herb, I'm going to come back to you, particular that's worth noting. Again, probably not fast enough, but in the AI space that would have been surprising to us a year ago.
Well, it's true. Many nations have recognized some need to govern AI in some sense, in the broad sense of the term, and this, of course, that's what you're talking about. That some nations, many nations, do recognize that need. But there's also the other side of that is that all of these nations hope that AI is going to give them military and strategic and economic advantages over their rivals, and so any agreement to among nations to curtail or govern or restrict the application of AI in any way is going to curtail some of those advantages. And so transforming this recognition that there is a need for governance into something real, something actionable, is going to be really tough.
Yeah, and you're seeing that, Ash, in the bio space too, kind of attention to it, but not nearly fast enough.
Not nearly fast enough, but also there is this tension between advancement and using this tool to help with the safety and help with the research efforts that have to go on, and maybe get ahead of some of these things. There's that on the one side, and then on the other side, there's all this horrible, terrible stuff. So governance can't just handle the one negative piece. It has to take into account the other side. And there's this whole thing about economic and other competitiveness with the world's bioeconomy right now. You cannot just up and tell a country or countries, hey, you can't use this. They have to think about the economic implications for themselves. To say that we're going to cut off a tool like this entirely isn't realistic, and so it poses another challenge to governance. How do you govern when you have a situation like this?
Ambush, I'm going to pull you in here because I think in terms of governance, you were mentioning COP and the instruments we have around climate, but also I know this point on who it affects and how is something you think about quite often on the equity side of it. So I wonder if this might be a good point for you to jump in.
Sure. The climate problem is an interesting one because it really is a global problem. It affects everyone, and everyone actually has some effect on climate change through their emissions. So it's one of these issues that really does require global governance. For example, the COP, as I mentioned earlier, which is the Conference of the Parties to the Framework Convention on Climate Change, to which all governments are signatories, is really a kind of an annual stock taking, but also efforts to try to move the needle forward jointly. Having said that, the point that you made is very important, right? That every country really thinks about climate change differently and experiences climate change differently. Asha just mentioned issues about competitiveness, right? In the climate area, there's a kind of a tension between competitiveness desires by countries to be leaders in these new green technologies that actually, in a sense, is at odds with cooperation in some way. So we have this tension there, and then, of course, because the magnitude and the nature of the climate threat varies drastically across countries. It depends on local manifestations of the climate change. It depends on local social and economic circumstances and capacity. And therefore, we have this situation where different countries are experiencing the problems differently, and different countries have different kinds of capabilities to engage with the problem. And this is playing out in this global arena where we have to work together, but there are also these different national interests. So it is a challenge, but we are moving forward, again, slowly and not as quickly as we would like, but still moving forward.
Yeah, I think there's some real similarities when we think of the how everybody's affected different. It certainly comes up in the biospace. But Alex, when it comes to global governance, in your opening remarks, it's kind of a despairing time in the nuclear conversations. What are you seeing on the global governance landscape? Because it is so extraordinarily important that we do have some engagement between the nuclear powers in particular.
Well, I would remind us that the 2010s were actually the first decade since the end of World War II that hasn't seen a new nuclear weapon state, which was quite remarkable, given where we are today. And a lot of credit goes to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and the nuclear taboo that has evolved with it. But the treaty, the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, is in a crisis, in a deep crisis. We haven't seen a lot of progress with regard to nuclear disarmament, and we mentioned already efforts to re-modernize and expand arsenals. So the one highlight that I would mention here is really the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, the TPNW, which outright bans the possession and the use of nuclear weapons. It actually even bans the threat of use of nuclear weapons. It currently has 70 states parties. Of course, it's not supported by the nuclear weapon states and their allies. Of course, they oppose it very much so. But speaking only for myself here, in my view, the treaty does offer a new perspective on important nuclear issues for many countries and their citizens. And I think looking forward, it may not be likely, but I think it's still quite possible that the treaty will gain new momentum in the next couple of years, especially perhaps in Europe, when the war in Ukraine has been resolved and a sustainable peace agreement has been found, and the countries reevaluate their positions and policies toward nuclear weapons, perhaps especially in Europe.
So a question at the Bulletin we always get is, well, what can individuals do? What can people do? How to get engaged? And it's very difficult because these are huge global issues. And just a couple of years ago when we had Hank Green on, he said, no one individual can solve all these problems, but we can't solve any of them without individuals. So maybe very quickly in our last few minutes before we move over to Daniel Holtz and Bill Nye, Alex, I'm going to come to you. Why don't you start us on, is the TPNW a place that people can get engaged, or is there other ways that people can try to keep pressure on their leaders to create a safer future for us?
Well, you mentioned the TPNW. Let me just, perhaps if I had one point, I would say 2024 is an election year in many countries around the planet. Voting matters. And of course, there are presidential elections in this country. And all US elections raise the issue of the immense power vested in US presidents who have the sole authority to order the use of these weapons, and they can do so within minutes. This has always been, in our view, a very dangerous arrangement. And now I firmly believe that the risks of blundering into a nuclear war, given that we can launch them so quickly, are much, much higher than the risks of a surprise nuclear attack, a bolt out of the blue. So I firmly believe, and many on the board do so as well, that we need changes in these postures, launch on warning, first use, etc. And we hope that these conversations could at least be part of the conversations that we're going to have around the U.S. elections, later this year.
And then Herb, thank you, Alex. Herb, to you, with so much of this in the private sector, presumably on a lot of this tech, there are there's other avenues for individuals to help make a difference?
Well, I think that the fact that the private sector holds so much influence and power over the deployment of these technologies, AI, for example, space technologies, for example, they have a huge amount of influence. And I think that the first thing people ought to do is to understand that these private sector actors don't necessarily act in the national or international interest. They act to serve their own goals, the goals of profit, the goals of their CEO or what have you. And I would urge people to think about how one can govern private sector actors, especially in democracies, which is not an easy task.
Asha, I think that you struggle with that as well, or think about that, but what about in the biospace in terms of if individuals are watching, how can they pay attention to this? How can they get engaged?
Well, look, I think everybody, individuals all the way up to the highest levels of government and our international organizations, I think we need to pay much more attention to what's going on with bio. We should not, any of us, be in a position where we're waking up one day and we're suddenly surprised that some disease started in some country and has made it to our borders. We all know that disease doesn't know any borders anyway. We can maintain some awareness. We can maintain some preparedness. We can do some things about our own health. We can care about what's going on in other countries. But I also think we should be maintaining some awareness of what's going on with weapons threats, what's going on with the laboratory down the street. These are all things that we can know about, and we can be speaking to our elected and other appointed officials. And Alex talked about the presidency, and the presidency is huge and humongous. But our country and many countries also have something called Congress. And while kind of depends on the country, how we elect a Congress or how we elect the president might or might not depend on an individual's vote. Individual votes do count for who gets into Congress. We should be paying attention to what their platforms are and what their approach is. I think we've gone way too long sort of ignoring bio and putting it off to the side under nuclear, under climate change, under other disruptive technologies. We can do this. We're educated people all throughout the world. Let's pay attention.
Ambush, I'm going to give you the last word before we move on, but why don't you talk a bit about how individuals can engage on climate? There seems to be a little bit more space maybe there, and especially sitting in India, what are you seeing?
Yeah, well, I think on the climate area, I think my views will very much echo what's already been said, right? That individuals certainly can play a very important role. The climate area is interesting. Some of the earlier questions or issues in the climate area were around whether climate change was indeed happening and whether human activity was responsible for it. That was an issue that was settled in the scientific domain. And in many cases, in the social and political domains, although as we know, not fully. There still is efforts to, and actually concerted efforts to have disinformation around climate change to even question issues that have been settled scientifically. So I think that's the first area where individuals can play a role, is to make sure that there is increasing societal consensus around the science of climate change. The second part is, now that we know climate change is real and humans are responsible, why aren't we doing enough about that? And that really has to be an issue that has to be taken on board first and foremost by governments, because the nature of the problem is such that governments really have to lead from the front. And I think, again, as was already mentioned earlier, that this is where individuals can really play a role in pushing for greater policies and political action in this space. I want to mention two particular points here. One is that a lot of the focus in the climate area, in terms of action on climate change, focuses on mitigation, which is reducing greenhouse gas emissions that are driving climate change. At the same time, we also need to make sure that there's equal attention being paid in political and policy circles around adaptation, which is making sure that the people who are getting affected most by climate change are basically we're able to manage and reduce the impacts of those of climate change on those people. Secondly, I think the point I want to make is that while it's true that this is, as I mentioned earlier, it's a global problem and everybody's should be engaged in the problem, it's not a problem that has been caused by everybody equally. Countries and people who are richer have contributed more to the emissions historically, and therefore, because this is a problem of accumulated greenhouse gases, it's a cumulative responsibility. But also, and perhaps more importantly, not everybody has equal capacity and resources to engage with the problem. So while it is truly a problem where everybody has to engage, individuals and countries, we also have to understand that the leadership for engaging with the problem cannot be equal. Those with the greatest privilege, the greatest resources, the greatest financial and technical resources really have to take the lead in that. And I think individuals across the world have to make sure that their political leaders really understand this reality, and therefore push for climate action, but push it in a way that's fair and equitable and just.
Thank you so much. I'm going to turn it now over to my colleague, Daniel Holtz and Bill Nye. Before I do, though, I really want to thank our members of our Science and Security Board today, Ambush Sagar in India, Alex Glasser from Princeton, Asha George here in the US, in Washington, D.C., where we're seated right now, Herb Lynn from Stanford. Thank you so much. And Daniel, over to you right now. You're coming back to me. Okay, so apparently we're going to hold until we get to Daniel and Bill. So while we do that, why don't we turn back here? And I think that if we don't fix that shortly, we're going to say goodbye to our audience. So thank you for that. But let's see if we can get it fixed beforehand. Alex, I think I'm going to come back to you one more time. I know we went pretty quickly through some of the changing nuclear realities. And I just want to give you a little bit more time to maybe talk through a little bit on the landscape. We've been hearing about North Korea and things that are happening there. We're still continue to watch developments in Iran. Is there anything that maybe we can add in? And then if we're not able to fix the technical difficulties, I think then we'll probably close out with that.
Well, you're right. A lot of the attention currently, and rightfully so, is on the war in Ukraine and in Gaza, as I mentioned, but these other crises have not gone away. That in a normal year we would be talking about at one of these events. North Korea is essentially proceeding with its nuclear program. The Bulletin just ran an article earlier this week, including by Sick Hacker, arguing that North Korea might actually be preparing for a war, which is something that no one really talks about very much. So that is still very much on the table. We've seen reports that North Korea is collaborating with Russia in the war in Ukraine. So everything is connected on that end. Meanwhile, in Iran, very similar story in many ways. The JCPOA, of course, the agreement that was in place and that is no longer working, that is now a sort of thing of the past. Iran is enriching uranium at an unprecedented level, at two very high enrichment levels. And it's our understanding that from a technical perspective, if Iran made a decision to pursue a nuclear weapon, it may be just months away from doing so. And again, there's the connection with the war in the Middle East, where Iran at some point may be involved. So these are crises that are looming, and that we haven't talked about very much, but it doesn't mean that they don't exist, not at all.
Right, and just because it's a natural segue, Asha, you've been watching these wars and crises, and gives you a lot of concern in your colleagues about how to think about different biological crises. I know you've thought and talked about that. Could you just share that a bit?
Well, I think there are two things. One is many of the same comments that Alex just made could be made about the biological side. The State Department talks about two countries, Russia and North Korea, having active offensive biological weapons programs. It talks about China and Iran also engaging in some activities that could or may not be biological weapons oriented. And we have to assume that there aren't just four countries that are looking at this. So we have that. We have this specter of the use of biological weapons on battlefields in crises. But then you also have the other side of it, where war and public health are inextricably linked. So if you have wars and countries in crisis, their health goes down, the public health goes down, they become more vulnerable, and then we have more diseases, circulating in their own countries and elsewhere. And you can layer on all this other stuff too. Ambuj will has talked about the impact of climate change on disease. Is particularly worrisome. I mean, yes, it's all global, but in arenas where there's already war going on and crises already going on, it's just a huge complicating factor. Melting of the Arctic and some of the encroachment that we're talking about that contributes to climate change also contributes to diseases coming to the fore that we haven't seen in many, many years. I mean, centuries, and I would imagine in some cases. So we have a really complicated situation that we, in terms of the Biological and Toxin Weapons Convention and some of these other conventions and treaties, just don't really address particularly well, because I think the world tried to leave it behind in 1976. But it's a new day, and there are new weapons. So I think the greatest difficulty, though, is going to be, at least with a nuclear weapon, you can see it. Same thing with chemical. With biological, I don't know that it's going to be quite that obvious. Nobody should be, from a military standpoint, coming forward with a biological weapon that just destroys everybody all at once. You'd actually want to do something lower level. So there's a question. And our ability to attribute things, as we've seen with other diseases, is not great, not here in the United States or throughout the world. That's my perspective, our perspective on biological weapons, and it's something we have to continue to track as we go forward from here.
And just because you mentioned attribution, Herb, I know you're one of the loudest voices in our room as we're talking through this about mis and disinformation and our ability. I mean, as attribution and some of these issues become so much more important, the inability to know where to turn, who to look for authoritative information. That's something you've been thinking a lot about, and what that actually means for our ability to solve problems. You want to talk a little bit about in the kind of advancement of those technologies?
Well, so artificial intelligence gives you, for example, the idea that you can create deep fakes of images and videos and audio and even text that sounds authentic but isn't. And these deep fakes can be deployed to influence opinion and polarize opinion further and so on. Today, it is possible to, I mean, first of all, there are no technological solutions to that. If for every deep fake that comes along, yes, you could probably develop a way of, especially with audio and video, you could probably develop a way of detecting that it was fake, but a technological way, but there'll be this interval where you won't have that way of doing it. And so at that point, the fakers are going to win. Okay, and then there's going to be another round of that. But the worst problem is often nobody cares about whether or not it's fake at all. And they just take the information because this is friendly to me, it supports my position, and I'll just believe it, and I let it influence my emotions and so on. So what you have to do is you have to learn to care where it's coming from. You have to care whether or not this is really true. And by doing some research and so on, you can find out whether it's checking other sources and so on. But of course, the problem with that is that you have to check sources that you might not otherwise trust. You might have to check, a mainstream media source for that rather than some fringe source. So you have to want to do that, and that's really the biggest problem. So people want to be able to defend themselves against this stuff. First, they have to care. If you want to do it, then there are many ways of helping yourself out. But the first, most important thing is that you have to care.
Well, on that, we're going to take a short break, and we'll be back momentarily with Daniel Holtz and Bill Nye. Thank you to our guests today, and hold on shortly, and we'll be back to you in a moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. And I'm delighted to be joined by science educator Bill Nye to discuss actions we can take to turn back the hands of the doomsday clock. So, Bill, you've pointed out that many apocalypse films start with characters ignoring the warnings of scientists.
Yes, yes.
And we've just heard scientists and experts raising alarm bells. So my question to you is real life following the plot of a disaster movie?
I guess so. Yeah, I mean, I remember very well Colossus, the Forbin project. This is an older reference from the disco era. But the premise was that the Soviet computers, the computer that controlled Soviet weapons was connected to the United States' computer that controlled nuclear weapons. And wouldn't it be great if the two computers could agree on not blowing stuff up? And so, so things went wrong. Things went very wrong. And what everybody's afraid of, if I understand it, you are a physicist full time. I'm an engineer. I still have a license, man, but I don't work in it full time. But when you write a computer program in the good old days, by that I mean 3 years ago, what you'd put in, you had a pretty good idea of what was going to come out. But the trouble with artificial intelligence is we don't know what's going to come out. So what if these fire control systems, as they're called, interact in a way that's unpredictable and
Yeah, sometimes the surprises are good, but sometimes not so good.
Surprises are good. Okay.
So I know you share our concern about climate change, and as you travel the world giving talks and speaking with people, what is your sense of the level of awareness and kind of engagement with climate change? Is the tide finally turning?
Well, the tide is turning-ish. Everybody, don't take my word for it. A few years ago, the mainstream media, as it's referred to, New York Times, Washington Post, Baltimore Sun, whatever it might be, would have an article about climate change once a month or so. Now there's an article almost every day with a reference to climate change. Even in the Wall Street Journal, which is sort of two newspapers in one, the regular reporting has climate change every day, and the editorial page doesn't. And everybody running for president on the other side, on the conservative side right now, none of them are willing to mention climate change. And the one guy who did has dropped, they've all dropped out. So that's bad for the future. And people say to me, Bill Nye, science guy, what can I do about climate change? Vote. Vote. It all adds up. Vote. We can do this, people. We can do this.
And this is my next question. 2024, as what's been mentioned, is this unusual election year. Billions of people around the world voting. So how much does our future depend on the outcomes of these votes?
Well, it's the most important thing in the world. Is that a big deal? So I thought you were being ironic or something. So I used to say, I'm of a certain age, I used to say that the election of 2000 was the most important election of our lifetime, because no matter what else happened, if Al Gore, and people love to hate Al Gore, knock yourselves out, but if he had become president, we would have done something about climate change. But as it was, we didn't do anything about it. In fact, things just got worse and worse. Snowball, pun intended, effect got doubled down on drill, baby, drill and all that. But with that in mind, let's keep that in mind and vote. If nothing else, take the environment into account when you vote. You can hate me, you can hate all of us people of my ancestry and upbringing. You can hate me, fine, knock yourselves out. But the world's climate is changing because of human activity, and the U.S. has to lead. Now, look, I'm from the United States. American English is my first language. Okay, I got all that. My perspective is skewed or influenced or whatever. But the United States is the world's most influential culture. No matter what else you say about it, it is the world leader in culture. And so we want to export our values as well as whatever else we might sell. And along that line, we want to be the world leaders in renewable energy and fairness. What everybody's running around nowadays, all bent out of shape about diversity, equity, inclusion issues. That's all about being fair. We want it to be fair, inclusive, and we want to change the world. Back to you, Daniel.
And all of this impacts all of us, including those of us in the US. So we need to be engaged. And so kind of along those lines, we've heard, about all these threats to civilization, nuclear and bio, climate change.
The biological threat is the real deal, man.
Yeah. Pandemics. I mean, there are lots of things to worry about. So my question is, how do we raise the alarm? How do we convey this kind of sense of urgency without making people despondent? And part of that is, how do you keep up your sense of optimism?
Doomism, so-called, right?
Yeah.
Where it's all so bad, there's nothing we can do, and so on. Yeah. You guys, you've got to be optimistic, or you're not going to get anything done. Here in the U.S., it's a big deal this time of year with these football teams going at it, U.S. football. Nobody who plays on either team thinks they're going to lose. Like, that's not how this works, man. By the time you get to that level, you believe that you can beat the other team, not easily. You have tremendous respect for the other team. You're concerned about the other team, but you know in your heart that you're going to be able to prevail. You guys, we can do this. Come on, we can solve these problems. We can address these problems. And I strongly believe, as I mentioned a moment ago, it starts with voting. And if you're too young to vote out there, make sure that your grown-ups in your world vote. and just please take the environment into account. The environment includes climate change, human-induced, all this carbon dioxide and methane into the atmosphere, biological threats, and this accidental incorporation of all these crazy weapons, which just happened with people disagreeing for a few decades.
Yeah, so vote, talk to your friends, talk to your family.
The other thing we could do, Daniel, he started it, don't come running to me. The other thing we could do about climate change and biological threats and so on is talk about it. If we were talking about it the way we talk about all these other important issues, crime, football games, we would be doing something about it. And so when I look at the atomic scientist clock, that is a conversation piece, literally, right? This thing, this minute hand is set up to get people talking about these big issues.
Right. Yeah.
So thank you.
And the idea, 90 seconds to midnight, the idea is it's a conversation starter. Like this is meant to prod people to.
So it used to be 10 minutes or something, right? With 17 minutes.
17 minutes at the end of the Cold War.
The end of the Cold War. The Cold War is still going on.
Yeah.
Everybody, okay, you hate me. You hate people of my background and ancestry. I got all that. You hate progressives. I got all that. But the thing in Ukraine is just the extended dance mix of World War II. I mean, it's still going on.
Yeah.
It's not something you can fool with, people.
Now with nuclear weapons.
Yes, now with nuclear weapons.
And it's, you know, not only Russia, but China, we're headed into a three-way arms race. It's really,
it's a solvable problem. Nobody wants to shoot these things.
Yeah.
The idea was just to have them,
yes,
so that nobody would shoot them. But now with artificial intelligence, as I understand it, you could be shooting by accident.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
All right, back to you.
Yeah. So, you know, along these lines, so let's get back to climate. In some ways, the solution to climate is very straightforward. We just need to stop burning fossil fuels.
Whoa, what?
That's it. That's
you should have said something.
I know.
What are you going to do?
Okay,
Start
there's some
innovating
details
with
you know,
solar panels, wind, and distribution.
Maybe that might help.
So, you know, I understand everybody has this idea, well, swords into plowshares. We'll take nuclear material and make it into nuclear power plants. Nominally an okay idea, but our problems are political. Nobody wants, you know, NIMBY, not in my backyard.
Yeah.
Well, there's also banana. Are you down with banana?
I don't know that one.
Build banana. Build absolutely nothing anywhere near anything. And so I understand this sounds like a panacea. We just take this material, repurpose it, but it takes 15, 20 years to get a license for these things. We don't, it's just much harder. The political problems are, in a sense, more difficult than the technical ones. And the security problems are the big problems. That's how we got there. So better transmission lines, wind, solar, and not shut down the nuclear power plants that are working now.
Yeah.
But, and then if you're asking me, you are a physicist full time. We're not going to talk about that one astronomical phenomenon.
No black holes.
But is it reasonable to you that we will have nuclear fusion in the next few decades?
Yeah, so I mean, it would be great. Nuclear fusion is harnessing the power of the sun. Wouldn't that be amazing? It's very technically challenging.
But so many people are working on it. They're closer than ever, right?
We're closer than ever, but we're still decades away, even in the most optimistic scenario. So it's not going to save us. So we need to do everything else we can.
So you guys, there isn't a panacea. There isn't what everybody talks about, a silver bullet. But the longest journey begins with but a single step.
Yes.
Let us reduce fossil fuels as fast as we can. Let us advance our transportation system so they're not quite so inefficient. And let's, the big thing I keep talking about is transmission lines. If we had a way to move electricity around less inefficiently, we could really get something.
We need to do
everything
we can,
all at once,
except for burn fossil fuels. That's the one thing we need to stop, and we can't stop. I think that's speaking of stopping, that's probably a good place to end. I want to thank
wow.
science educator Bill Nye. To learn more about the doomsday clock and why it's at 90 seconds to midnight, and to follow these important issues all year long, please check out our website, thebulletin.org. Thank you for joining us. We are adjourned.
You're looking at live pictures of the sky above the Utah Test and Training Range. In less than an hour, a 4.5 billion-year-old piece of the ancient solar system will be landing here in the desert. This is live coverage of NASA's OSIRIS-REx sample return.
There's been nothing like OSIRIS-REx in NASA's repertoire. I like to call it the Daredevil spacecraft.
10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And liftoff of OSIRIS-REx, its 7-year mission to boldly go to the asteroid nebula and back.
Welcome and thank you for joining us live from the Army's Dugway Proving Ground in Dugway, Utah. This is special coverage of America's first asteroid sample return mission, OSIRIS-REx, as it arrives back to Earth after more than 7 years traveling in deep space. I'm Lauren Ward, and joining me is Dr. Jim Garvin, Chief Scientist at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center. He's a planetary geologist by training and also probably one of the most excited people around here today.
Lauren, literally, I'm over the asteroid.
Better than over the moon, over the asteroid. Well, I'm excited to share the stage with you today. We've got a lot to discuss and a huge adventure straight ahead. And for those joining at home, Jim and I will be taking your questions live throughout the show. You can send those our way by using the hashtag AskNASA on X, YouTube, and Twitch. And if you want to follow along this final ride in the mission at home, scan the QR code on your screen and check out NASA's Eyes on the Solar System, where you can view a complete 3D simulation and follow the OSIRIS-REx sample return capsule to the ground. And during the broadcast, you'll hear directly from the mission team, so listen very closely for those operational callouts. Before we get into the action, though, tell me, Jim, what are you most excited about?
Lauren, it's the masterpiece of engineering we have here. Just think about this. In 50 years, we've gone from bringing things on the moon back with crews to all robotic sample return for science that's literally beyond words. It's sublime. So we can't wait to see what we're going to learn.
We cannot wait. So OSIRIS-REx is an acronym for Origins, Spectral Interpretation, Resource Identification, and Security Regolith Explorer. Yes, it's a mouthful, but the mission describes an audacious objective. Send a probe on a long journey to an asteroid, map it, grab a sample, then bring it back to Earth for analysis. Following launch on September 8th, 2016, the plucky probe took an extraordinary route through the solar system until it reached the asteroid Bennu. Then, after more than a year of mapping the surface in exquisite detail, OSIRIS-REx made a careful descent in October 2020 to collect a sample. 3 years later, we are here at Dugway Proving Ground in the deserts of Northeast Utah, awaiting that capsule containing the sample, which experts tell us is essentially a time capsule of the ancient solar system. We've got a great team joining us this morning as we experience this thrilling conclusion of this grand adventure. Sophia Roberts is located near our landing zone, and she'll be speaking with some key players in the mission. We'll also hear from James Traley, who will be tracking mission operations and bringing us real-time updates, essentially our eyes and ears inside mission control, which sounds to me like a good place to jump into the story. James, good morning. How are we looking?
Yeah, good morning, Lauren and Jim. It's already been a very bright early morning for all of our team members involved in this mission. Just a little bit further north from us, about 4 hours ago in Waterton, Colorado, the team met to assess the readiness to release the SRC from the main OSIRIS-REx spacecraft. And I'm very happy to report that they gave the green light, they gave the go command officially to release the SRC from the OSIRIS-REx. Let's listen in on what that command sounded like. That command came after more than almost 4 billion miles of spaceflight and years of planning, plotting, and dreaming about this asteroid Bennu. The SRC has now been separated from the main OSIRIS-REx spacecraft and is coming in rain or shine today. So team members are keenly aware of the weather conditions out on the range. It's looking pretty great for today. We did have a bit of rain the other day, which softened up that landing spot just enough to make the SRC land perfectly smooth on that surface. The temperatures are going to be around the 50s, 50 degree Fahrenheit. Low winds out there, calm winds at the surface around 6 miles an hour, pretty light. Very clear skies this morning as well. As we were actually driving out, I saw a shooting star, a meteor, and in just a few moments, the SRC itself will be streaking across the skies as we begin to track it. Just a few moments ago, we heard the helicopters take off from here to head out to Wig, just at the edge of the landing ellipse. Our high altitude plane is up in the sky, ready to take images in the infrared of our SRC, and we are here ready to go to cover all of today's mission events. I'm going to be right here with you all throughout the process as we get closer to that entry, descent, and landing. But for now, back to you, Lauren and Jim.
All right, thanks, James. We'll be back to you for mission status updates throughout the morning. For now, let's give you a quick geography lesson on where we are today. We are sitting about 85 miles southwest of Salt Lake City in the heart of the Dugway Proving Ground, a historic Army facility. In less than an hour, the sample will touch down in our landing ellipse at the Utah Test and Training Range, managed by the Air Force, about 13 miles north of where we're speaking right now. Mission teams have set up a clean room just 1 mile away from us, where the sample will end its journey today. Tomorrow morning, a C-17 aircraft will take off from the runway behind us and deliver the sample to NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston.
Unbelievable. Can't wait.
Oh gosh, I can't wait to see that C-17. Oh, that's going to be breathtaking. We have a lot of ground to cover, and we'll be bringing you into the heart of the action. For all of NASA's many missions over the years, OSIRIS-REx lives in an extremely rare category. It not only ventured out into space with cameras and sensors, but it's bringing a physical sample of the ancient solar system back to Earth for detailed analysis. Mission planners selected a small asteroid called Bennu as their destination. Following a successful touch-and-go procedure to grab a sample on October 20th, 2020, OSIRIS-REx has been making its way back to Earth. It's been a thrilling ride, already packed with technical achievements and scientific discoveries. Today's historic landing continues that saga, promising exciting research ahead. Beside our main event this morning, we've got a ton of extremely cool stuff. We'll hear from a special guest astrophysicist whom you probably recognize more for his chart toppers. We'll speak with one of the helicopter pilots about his role in getting recovery teams out to the landing site and bringing the capsule back home. And we'll even hear from the cast of the film Asteroid City. And of course, we'll give you a front row seat to the mission itself, the science, the engineering, and why a mission to gather space rocks, well, rocks,
right?
NASA's first asteroid sample return happens in less than 35 minutes. Let's now take you to Wig Mountain, where our field reporter, Sophia Roberts, is standing at the forward edge of the vast landing zone, where she joins us live now. Sophia,
Thank you,
paint us a picture.
Lauren and Jim. Now, it is a bright and chilly morning, but the excitement certainly is rising. Now, let me give you a lay of the land of what is going to happen today. The sample return capsule is going to hit the top of the atmosphere at approximately 8:40. It will descend through our atmosphere for 13 minutes before touchdown. Once it does touch down, our team with the recovery team will go to the sample or the capsule and start that carefully rehearsed recovery process. Now, I am on the edge of the landing zone that we call the ellipse. It is a huge landing zone that is larger than the size of Rhode Island. And behind me are the helicopters that will be taking those recovery teams to the capsule once it lands. Now, these teams are prepped and ready to go. We're just waiting for that capsule to arrive. Back to you, Lauren.
Wow, Sophia, I think she has the best seat in
Oh
the
my
house.
God, take me there.
I want to go there. All right, let's get some quick facts about the OSIRIS-REx spacecraft. Filled with fuel, the vehicle weighs more than 4,600 pounds. That's about the same size as 3 large cows. Did you know that, Jim?
I did not, and I'm afraid of those cows.
Let's stay away from the cows. With its solar arrays extended, the spacecraft is about 40 feet long, or the size of a short school bus. The solar arrays can power up to 3,000 watts, which is the same as a portable generator. Once on Bennu, the 11-foot robotic arm collected dust and pebble samples, while the cameras got up-close images of the asteroid. How about that? And then, of course, there's the SRC, or the Sample Return Capsule, the capsule that separated from the main vehicle and is currently on its way to our landing zone in the Utah desert. So, Jim, I think importantly, the team can't just open up the capsule right on the desert floor, right? What happens next?
So next, we have to safe it, we have to bag it, we have to contain it, and transport it to the clean room about a mile from here. And in that clean room, we will actually bring the sample return capsule in, take off the back shell and the heat shield, and carefully arrange to nitrogen purge that special sample container inside, so it does not introduce any contamination from Earth, because we want asteroid, not Earth.
That's right. And I love missions like this because I find my own imagination just bursting with possibilities and questions. And so with about a little bit more than 30 minutes to go before the SRC hits the top of the atmosphere, we're going to take a few minutes to dive into the nuts and bolts of the mission itself. We've got a great mission overview to help explain. Take a look.
OSIRIS-REx is NASA's first asteroid sample return mission. It launched in September 2016 on a journey to explore a near-Earth asteroid called Bennu. After arriving in 2018, OSIRIS-REx spent nearly 2 years orbiting Bennu, mapping and studying its rugged terrain before carrying out its primary science objective. On October 20th, 2020, the spacecraft ventured to a small crater in the asteroid's northern hemisphere. It dodged jagged rocks and towering boulders and plunged its arm into the loose surface, excavating 6 tons of debris while collecting about 250 grams of material. OSIRIS-REx stowed its bounty and closed its sample return capsule. It bid farewell to Bennu in May 2021, embarking on a 1.2 billion-mile cruise back to Earth. Now, 2 years and 4 months after leaving Bennu, OSIRIS-REx is closing in on the place where its journey began. On September 24th, the spacecraft will approach to nearly 63,000 miles from Earth. It will power up and release its sample return capsule at 4:42 a.m. Mountain Time. The capsule must be jettisoned within a narrow time frame and at just the right angle to hit its target, an area of roughly 250 square miles in Utah's West Desert. Once the capsule is away, OSIRIS-REx will fire its thrusters to avoid colliding with Earth. At 8:42 a.m., the capsule will streak into the atmosphere at a blistering 27,000 miles per hour. It will race across the western U.S. and begin to glow with heat, allowing infrared trackers on the ground to chart its progress. As it pushes deeper into the atmosphere, the capsule will rapidly decelerate, subjecting the Bennu samples to a punishing 32 Gs. About 2 minutes after entry, it will slow to Mach 1.4 and deploy its drogue parachute, stabilizing its descent. The capsule will enter special use airspace at 8:46 a.m., almost 10 miles above the Department of Defense Utah Test and Training Range. Radar stations will lock on and track it to within 30 feet of its landing site. At 8:50 a.m., the capsule will extract and deploy its main parachute 1 mile above the ground. It will make its final descent at a leisurely 11 miles per hour, like a marathon runner savoring a victory lap, before touching down in the desert soil at 8:55.
Wow, I get chills every time I see
Me
that.
too.
Amazing. All right, so we know you have questions, so please continue to send them to us using the hashtag AskNASA. But before we go any further, I've got a question for you, Jim. Why is the mission called OSIRIS-REx? It sounds like a new hybrid kind of dinosaur or something.
It does, but it's actually the name of an Egyptian deity, a bird deity, but it means all the stuff the mission is going to be doing. So we're going to be searching for clues to the origins of our solar system chemically, looking at how we can ground truth all the data we have for asteroids from Earth, other spacecraft right up close with samples. We're going to look at the resource potential of asteroids, metals, hydrated water as in hydrated minerals, and also consider security of our planet from these kinds of objects. It's a big name with a big mission with many things it has to do. It's multiple missions in one.
Yeah, 3 missions in one, in fact. We know we have a global audience for this event, and throughout the morning, we'll be taking questions submitted via social media. So let's take one now. All right, what do we have? At S4Mule_B asks, what's the significance of studying asteroids like Bennu for advancements in planetary science?
These are literally the time capsules of the early solar system with those bits and fragments we can never get here. So we go and bring them home to connect ourselves to the place we live, our solar system. So that's one of the big takeaways of this. We will read the clues of Mother Nature on how our world works in the context of all the rest of the planetary system.
Fantastic. All right, let's take another question. What do we have? All right, from at Endanger817. Approximately how large is the sample size and what kind of analysis will be performed?
So it's about 8 or 9 ounces. It's about a size of a baseball and a half. And the kind of analyses are amazing. There are toolkits and instruments that can look at nanoscale characteristics that you wouldn't imagine. We could see the hairs on a foot of an ant, but we'll look at those in the context of another object in the solar system. So, wow.
Wow, indeed. All right, we'll be taking some more questions throughout the morning. Okay, so let us head back to the ellipse to talk to Sophia. I understand, Sophia, you've got a critical team member with you. Take it away.
Thanks, Lauren. Yes, I am joined right now by Stu Wiley, who is the Oscar or on-scene commander of this recovery mission. Thank you for joining me, Stu.
Thanks for having me, Sophia.
All right, so you are the person who kicks off this whole process before even the recovery team gets on the ground. Can you walk us through your process?
Yeah, so essentially what's going to happen is that once the capsule is undershoot, we'll have a better idea of where it's going to land on the range. And based on that, I'll know exactly what kind of weapon systems we used in that area, what kind of tests we've done in that area. So I'll know better what kind of hazards are in the area. Once I land on the ground, I'll do an initial sweep of the area and methodically move towards the capsule and mark any kind of hazards that I find, whether it be munition hazards, of course, and or the industrial hazards, and even the environmentally sensitive areas that we have out here. So.
All right, and how did you prepare for this today?
So preparation has been in the process for a long time. Between myself and Jasmine Nakayama, we've got 40 years worth of explosive knowledge. Most of it is on this range here, so we know the ranges very well. The team and the UTR have been working together, both Lockheed and NASA, and we've been doing rehearsals so that we are more familiar with their capsule and they're more familiar with our terrain here as well. Yeah, so.
And this is an active proving ground here. So what are the other steps that we have to ensure that our teams are safe?
Yeah, so at the Utah Test and Training Range, we do have a lot of different hazards out here. Like I said, the weapon systems that we test. We're going to keep them safe from that. We have, again, done many of the preparations with them already. They've taken safety briefings. They've been briefed on the actual items that we've dropped out here in their range safety brief. One of the hazards that we're going to be dealing with, though, is the helicopters that you see behind us. And they've been through practices getting on and off the helicopters and working in and around them. But I think the biggest hazard that we're going to have is slipping. We had some recent rain, so that I think is going to be our biggest hazard, but it could be fun too. So,
well, wonderful. I know that you have your last preparations for the day, so I'm going to let you go, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Sophia.
Thanks, Sophia. Stu's got a big day today.
Oh my goodness.
A lot to do. All right, Jim, we know we have space fans from all walks of life all over the world. One super fan in particular is a well-known astrophysicist with an atypical side hustle. But I'm guessing you know him probably more from his side thing than his science thing.
Well, that's right. He's literally space royalty and rock royalty. Perfect for a mission to bring back rocks.
Just a true rock star. Let's let him speak for himself.
Hello, NASA folks, space fans, asteroid aficionados. This is Brian May of Queen, as you know, probably, but also immensely proud to be a team member of OSIRIS-REx. I can't be with you today. I wish I could. I'm rehearsing for a Queen tour, but my heart's there with you as this precious sample is recovered. Happy sample return day, and congratulations to all who worked so incredibly hard on this mission, especially my dear friend Dante, with whom we already created this beautiful book. God bless you all.
Speaking of rock stars, joining us is NASA's Lori Glaze, Planetary Science Mission Director. Welcome, Lori.
Hey, good morning.
Great to have you here, Lori.
Great to have you. And you and Jim go back quite a ways, right?
Oh, yes. Jim and I actually go back several decades, but we've been working together closely for many, many years, and it's so good to see you here. What an exciting moment.
Lori.
Thank you.
It is a really exciting day. So OSIRIS-REx is part of a larger autumn for asteroids, asteroid autumn, as we've been saying. Can you talk about some of the other missions that are happening this fall?
Happy to do that. It is really exciting. We have lots of asteroid missions, and actually 4 of them have major milestones coming up this autumn. Right on the heels of the sample return happening today. In 2 days, on September 26th, is the 1-year anniversary of a little mission you may have heard of last year called the Double Asteroid Redirection Test, demonstrated for the first time humanity's ability to deflect the path of an asteroid. How cool is that? And then coming up on October 5th is the launch of a mission called Psyche, going to visit a special asteroid called Psyche also, which is one of only about 9 of asteroids that we think are made primarily of metal, have a very high metal content, iron and nickel. And then about a month after that, on November 1st, is going to be the first asteroid flyby of our mission called Lucy, which will ultimately visit Trojan asteroids that lead and trail Jupiter in its orbit around the sun. But in November, we'll fly by a main belt asteroid called Dinkinesh.
Wow.
Wow, check that out.
It literally is an asteroid autumn. But Lori, one other thing, OSIRIS-REx, is a multi-purpose mission, all this great stuff you mentioned. And one of its key jobs is to help us with planetary defense. How does it do that? Way out there.
So actually, OSIRIS-REx gave us some really important new information about an effect, a force that occurs on asteroids called the Yarkovsky effect. And what that really is we know there's gravitational pulls on the asteroids, and we can predict that with our trajectories. But Yarkovsky effect says that the sun's radiation heats up one side of the asteroid, and then as the asteroid rotates, the radiation radiates off into the deep space. And that actually kind of acts as a force that kind of pushes back against the forward trajectory. And so it changes our predictions on where the asteroid might be. Over time, it really makes a difference. And OSIRIS-REx gave us some fantastic new measurements on that effect.
Unbelievable.
Wow, that is truly unbelievable. Nobody appreciates the planetary defense aspect more than me and Jim.
Yeah, we want to be safe.
Big fans. Really, really quickly here. This isn't the end for OSIRIS-REx. What's next?
Yeah, so really exciting. Now that the spacecraft has released the capsule successfully, about 20 minutes after that release, we're now repurposing the spacecraft for a new mission called OSIRIS APEX, where APEX stands for Apophis Explorer, and it's off on its new mission to explore the asteroid Apophis, which is going to have a close flyby of Earth in 2029.
All right, stay tuned, everybody.
Unbelievable.
That is fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Lori, for
Thanks,
joining
Lori.
us. You're going to
My
stick around for the
pleasure.
show, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay. This will be the biggest U.S. sample return since the Apollo mission to the moon. But this is not the first time that anyone has captured a piece of an asteroid. On the arrival of the historic OSIRIS-REx sample, we celebrate that the Japanese Space Agency, or JAXA, has already visited 2 asteroids, Itokawa in 2005 and the asteroid Ryugu in 2019. The missions Hayabusa and Hayabusa 2 proved that it could be done and paved the way for today's ambitious goals of this daring enterprise. All right, let's send it back over to James for an update on mission operations. Go ahead, James.
Yeah, thanks, Lauren. So everything continues to be nominal. I've been tracking the mission status here. Everyone looks dialed in, ready to go. You saw a few moments ago Sophia with Stu Wiley, our on-scene commander. He's ready to go. He understands the mission. They are ready to get out and recover that sample today. And as I mentioned earlier, just a few moments ago, actually, I guess a couple hours ago at this point now, the SRC was released from the main OSIRIS-REx spacecraft. When that release took place, it was given an initial spin, which kind of preserves its angular momentum, its speed as it's coming in to Earth's atmosphere. It's similar to throwing a perfect spiral on a football, and teams are hoping for that perfect touchdown today. What you're about to see is basically the equivalent of throwing a touchdown pass over 10 football fields away and landing it perfectly in that end zone. So you can see on your screen now the mission operations team. They are just next door, dialed in, ready to go. They've been monitoring the vitals of the SRC all morning. They've been there in the room, prepared and ready to go. I'm sure they are absolutely thrilled for this moment. They might even see themselves on the screen there in a second, but they are hype and ready to go. This is the Lockheed Martin team just a little bit north of us in Waterton, Colorado. They are also dialed in. They're the ones who gave that initial command this morning to release the SRC from the main OSIRIS-REx spacecraft. You just heard from Lori that OSIRIS-REx is now on its way to its extended mission. OSIRIS APEX visiting that near-Earth asteroid Apophis. A lot coming up in just a few moments. We're going to hit that key milestone of entry, descent, and landing. 13 minutes of punishing descent through Earth's atmosphere to us here in the Utah Test and Training Range. A lot coming up in just a few moments, but for now, back to you, Lauren and Jim.
Thanks, James. Very soon, NASA's Artemis program will be bringing us more cosmic samples to study by visiting a familiar beacon in the sky. Give us 60 seconds, and we'll give you the moon. Artemis 3 will be the first sample return mission of NASA's Artemis program, sampling rocks and regolith from one of 13 candidate regions on the moon, all located near the lunar South Pole. The Apollo lunar landers returned a treasure chest of samples that taught us about the history of the solar system, dating back about 4 billion years ago. Artemis missions will explore areas near the South Pole on the rim of the moon's oldest basin, the enormous South Pole Aitken Basin. Artemis will explore areas nearly 1 billion years older than those explored by Apollo. Lunar samples from Artemis 3 and future missions will help scientists interpret the impact history of the moon and Earth, as well as increase our understanding of planetary processes. OSIRIS-REx, the first U.S. mission to collect a sample from an asteroid, will return samples from asteroid Bennu. The rocks and dust collected will offer generations of scientists a window into a time when the sun and planets were forming over 4.5 billion years ago. Samples from OSIRIS-REx and Artemis could rewrite our understanding of the evolution of the solar system. And that's a look at your Artemis Moon Minute. Boy, Jim, how can you not get excited about that?
Oh my gosh.
Oh boy, that's going to be so cool. All right, Sophia is standing at the forward edge of the recovery zone with an update. Take it away, Sophia.
All right, thank you, Lauren. We are under 20 minutes away from EDL. That is entry, descent, and landing. And I don't think there's anyone here on planet Earth who has anticipated this day more than the principal investigator of the mission, Dante Loretta. Thank you for giving us time here today.
My pleasure. It's great to be here.
All right, so you are here on Wig Mountain because you are on the recovery team.
That's right.
Can you walk us through what you're going to be doing today?
So I'm part of the environmental sampling group. From day one, this mission has paid attention to keeping that sample pristine. And we're going to come down. We had some rain on Thursday. Most likely we're going to be encountering mud out there. We're also interested in the air quality and any water that might be standing, just so in the very rare event that any of that material somehow comes into contact with the sample. We have a record of it, and it won't compromise our science.
Oh, wonderful. And I think one of the really exciting things about a mission like this, especially with you working with the University of Arizona, is that you're partnering with educational institutions. So can you talk a little bit about the legacy that a mission like this has?
Yeah, thank you. I'm a professor at the University of Arizona in the Lunar and Planetary Laboratory, and our history goes all the way back to the Apollo missions. The founder of our lab, Gerard Kuiper, mapped the moon, helped pick the Apollo landing sites and the Surveyor landing sites, and we have been involved in every major NASA planetary mission since then. And really the best part of having a university lead a program like this is that it's a great training ground for the next generation. I've been on this program almost 20 years, and I've watched multiple generations of students grow up, become professionals, either join the team. We always take our team members on board when we need to fill roles, or off into other careers in aerospace engineering, science, and many other disciplines.
It's really great to foster those incredible questions about our universe.
Absolutely.
And I know that you need to get back to your team to go on that recovery process.
Yeah, the moment's almost here.
Yeah, so thank you so much for joining us, and best of luck out there today.
Thank you.
All right, back to you, Lauren.
Great. Thanks, Sophia. Wow. I can't wait for Dante to get his moment in the sun.
Goes Dante.
That is amazing. All right. So, Jim, the whole OSIRIS-REx spacecraft is not coming back today, right? It's just a part of it.
That's right. This is the whole spacecraft, 40 feet long, the size of a school bus. But this special little thing here, the sample return capsule, is bringing home the goodies. And that's what we've just released, and it will be entering the atmosphere, and you'll be hearing all about it. And the samples were collected at the asteroid back in October of 2020 from this TAGSAM thing that inserted them in the capsule, and the capsule was released. So that's what comes home. The rest of this goes on to Apophis.
That's right. We just heard Lori talk about that. But let's move over and take a look at this this replica SRC capsule. Now, this was an engineering model that was used in tests a few weeks ago for a drop test. Can you talk a little bit about the engineering of this?
That's right. This is a very special spacecraft, just like a small version of what we use to bring crews back when they come back home to Earth from the space station. It has a heat shield. It's about 30 inches across, so it's pretty big. It weighs over 100 pounds, has a back shell, and inside it has the goodies, the sample return canister and the sample cap, the small sample canister. So this is the vehicle that brings those samples protected from all those changes in environment from the top of the atmosphere, 13 minutes of descent to the touchdown point that we're waiting for today. This is a very special spacecraft.
It absolutely is. And it also was used in a drop test, as I mentioned. Let's take a look at some of that footage now.
Right. So just a couple weeks ago, we dropped this replica, this engineering test unit, from 5,000 feet with a parachute deployment, and went through all the operations, the choreography we need to actually make sure we can do it today. And that's what's going to be coming up. And it worked wonderfully. We inflated the big 24-foot parachute. It floated down to the surface at 11 miles an hour. We went through all the recovery operations, the safing, the bagging, and the containment to come over to the clean room here, where we'll be doing that today to make sure those samples are from Bennu, so we can study them here on Earth and not contaminated by our wonderful Earth.
That's right. And you know it's the actual SRC that they use because it is covered in dirt, as you can see on here.
This is dirt, scratch marks.
All the scratch marks, yeah.
It's a rough ride,
the real deal.
but we need it to come home. This
Absolutely.
is a real sort of homecoming.
Right. So there's a lot of science in missions like this. Not only is the SRC a treasure chest with material from the ancient solar system, but the mission itself is a platform for vital research about a range of things that you might not have expected.
SciFly's mission is to collect visual, infrared, and spectral data on spaceflight vehicles, including the OSIRIS-REx sample return capsule on its return to Earth. This gives engineers and scientists unique insight into our most challenging questions about hypersonic fluid dynamics by providing data critical to flight safety systems. The scientifically calibrated in-flight imagery team uses ground-based sensors and instruments flying on various aircraft to image asteroid sample returns, launch abort systems, parachute tests, rocket launches, and capsule returns, including Artemis 1 on both launch and reentry. The data we capture provides engineers with information on vehicle performance relative to what computational tools and wind tunnel tests today. It takes extensive planning to get it right. Upon its return from the asteroid belt, the OSIRIS-REx capsule will be traveling at 12 kilometers per second, or about 27,000 miles per hour. That's nearly twice as fast as objects coming back from low Earth orbit, and it will be among the 4 fastest human-made objects ever to fly in Earth's atmosphere. In partnership with the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, Rocket Technologies International, and universities in Australia and Germany, SciFly is coordinating 3 ground stations and 4 aircraft to collect data on the sample return capsule's trajectory, heat shield performance, and the plasma environment surrounding the capsule as it speeds to the surface, all of which will help NASA understand its performance and help future planetary entry missions succeed.
Joining us now is NASA's Kate Calvin, Chief Scientist and Climate Advisor. Kate, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
It is wonderful to have you. All right, so as NASA's Chief Scientist, you're looking at the big picture. How much teamwork across the agency has made to, a day like today a possibility?
A mission like this takes a big team, both within NASA and without. So outside of NASA. So the mission is managed by Goddard Space Flight Center in Maryland. The sample is going to be going to the Johnson Space Center in Texas after it leaves here. Marshall Space Flight Center in Alabama does the overall program management. Outside of NASA, we have collaborations both in industry, academia, and international. So Lockheed Martin is doing built the spacecraft and doing flight ops. Kinetics is doing navigation. We have a science team led by the University of Arizona. And then we have
Recovery operations. Helicopter 1 is departed wing to station keep outside the landing ellipse.
We got a confirmation that helicopters 1 and 2 have just taken off. Very exciting. All right.
So, Kate, one other thing, as an earth science, an expert on how our planet works in climate, can you tell us how this asteroid mission and the samples we return might impact how we understand life on Earth, how it evolved, and how climate issues now might be involved?
Yeah, so this asteroid Bennu may record some of the earliest history of our solar system. So scientists are looking at it to help us understand planet formation and the origins of water and carbon, which led to life here on Earth.
That's incredible.
That is incredible. And, Kate, I know you've been to several launches. That's our typical bread and butter here at NASA. But this is more of a homecoming. How does that feel to you?
It's great. The environment here is so nice, being with the team and thinking about, this spacecraft launched 7 years ago. And now there's all this amazing science just around the corner.
Can you believe it? The team has really been working hard. And are you going to stick around for the show?
Awesome.
Fantastic. All right. Well, Kate, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kate, for all you do.
Thank you so much. This seems like a perfect time to dig into some more information about Bennu. Bennu isn't part of the main asteroid belt. It's a NEO, a near-Earth asteroid with an orbit that occasionally brings it in close proximity with us here on Earth. Bennu is about 500 meters in diameter, which is taller than the Empire State Building. It rotates upside down on its axis compared to Earth, with a tilt of over 177 degrees. Scientists chose to study Bennu because of its
Recovery operations. Helicopter 2 has departed wing to station keep outside the landing ellipse.
All right, so you just heard that they have departed WIG. Excellent
Whoa.
Progress. Fantastic. Woo. All right. Moving on, it isn't as smooth a surface as we initially thought. It's actually covered in pebbles and marked by these large rocks and boulders nearly everywhere. One boulder in particular that OSIRIS-REx had to navigate around was nicknamed Mount Doom and was the size of a 2-story building. Bennu holds the Guinness World Record of the smallest object to be orbited by a spacecraft. How fun. Now let's get an update from Sophia, who is standing on the edge of the ellipse. Take it away, Sophia.
Okay, 2 of the helicopters have already just departed. So the team is already in the recovery process, or at least the beginning phases of it. But right now, we are waiting to hear precisely where the capsule is going to land before the rest of the teams head on over to that location. Now we are about under 10 minutes away from the capsule hitting the top of our atmosphere, and we are eagerly anticipating this largest sample of ancient solar system material that we have received since the last Apollo mission in 1972. So that is 51 years since we've had such a pristine and large sample of ancient solar system material. It's a really big day for science, and we're just in the beginning phases of today, but we are certainly excited to hear about what will happen and see those parachutes finally descend through our atmosphere. So yes, we're certainly excited, but this is just one phase of this amazing mission. I'm going to send it back to you, Lauren.
see the operational milestones we're expecting throughout the morning. SRC separation already happened, and the capsule is now heading for its rendezvous with Earth's atmosphere. Jim, it always appears like these operations are simply inevitable. You know, we grabbed the sample, we flew it back to Earth, we're headed in for landing, but it's never that simple, is it?
No, not at all. And so we have a lot of critical events that take masterful engineering. We have to hit the top of the atmosphere, transition through a high G, high heat environment, go from 27,000 miles an hour down to eventually 11 for that safe landing. All these things involve changes in environments, forces, things that could disrupt our sample and change them, which we want to document. And so we really want to understand this and finally bring it to rest so we can then bag it and encapsulate it so we can eventually get the sample into our clean room here. So we're ready to transfer it tomorrow to Houston to the Johnson Space Center. So this is a big process, well rehearsed by a masterful team.
Absolutely, and contains, you know, work from thousands of individuals who are making this happen. All right, so we know that you're submitting questions from all over. Let's take a few more social questions. All right, what do we have? At Dev Saran at 5342461. What are the preliminary steps to take to test a sample? The preliminary steps.
So first thing we do is, of course, bag it here and get it into the clean room and get that sample, that sample canister inside the sample return capsule, get it under nitrogen purge, meaning we flow nitrogen gas so no Earth atmosphere and microbes get involved. That'll happen today, period of a few hours. And then tomorrow we transfer to the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas, where all the fun happens at the Astromaterials Curational Facility, where we've done moon rocks and samples of interplanetary dust and lots of things. Those colleagues in a special clean room, perfectly designed for this mission, will unpack those precious samples in the small sample canister, the small device that was used on the end of the tag SAM, and they will go through a process to get it checked out, to do early reconnaissance, and to protect it very carefully.
That is incredible. And they built that whole clean room. No other asteroid samples before. This is the first one.
First ever.
First ever. As the SRC approaches the edge of Earth's atmosphere, we are just moments away from the world's largest ever asteroid sample return. Jim, what are you feeling right now?
I am literally tingling all over with exhilaration. This is a small step for a capsule and a giant leap for science.
It really is. And if that's one thing we can impart, that is it. This is a huge, huge milestone, a great achievement. So this is it. We are just 15 minutes away from the OSIRIS-REx sample return, a journey of 7 years and nearly 4 billion miles. The work of thousands culminates in this moment. Let's turn it over to our mission commentator, James Traley, to take us through the final moments. James, we're all yours.
Yeah, Lauren, buckle up and get ready for the ride of entry, descent, and landing. This is 13 minutes of crazy descent, punishing crazy deceleration of our spacecraft, starting at 27,000 miles per hour when it enters into Earth's atmosphere, and eventually slowing to a leisurely 11 miles per hour as it descends and lands on the Utah Test and Training Range.
Recovery operations. Helicopters 1 and 2 have arrived at the holding location.
So good news, our helicopters are ready to go and begin those recovery operations just as soon as we have confirmation of touchdown here. And as the sun begins to rise in the West Coast, the SRC is going to be streaking across the atmosphere above San Francisco, California, about 82 miles in altitude. It's going to be coming in hot, over 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit, almost a couple seconds after it hits that atmosphere. That's about half as warm as the surface of the sun, to give you some context. But don't worry, our sample will be safe and sound within. We have a heat shield, which is made of a phenolic impregnated carbon ablator. It's a very fancy term to describe what's going on with this heat shield. It basically ablates away or burns away any kind of heat flux that develops on that outer shell, making sure that our sample is safe and cool within. Similar technology that we use with astronauts coming back from the moon or any kind of other landers that we have going into planets and moons. So we're just a couple moments away from this key moment. It's going to be very exciting next couple 13 minutes here. And you'll hear a couple call outs come in from just next door in our mission operations team as they begin to get us ready for this key moment. It's a journey of 3.86 billion miles getting reduced to the scale of mere miles, 82 miles above the surface of the Earth in San Francisco. A couple key events are going to happen as soon as we get into the Earth's atmosphere. Very quickly we're going to deploy our drogue parachute. This is for stability, stabilizes our descent and make sure that we are continuing to target that landing ellipse that is here in the Utah Test and Training Range. It is a 36.5 by 8 mile landing ellipse that is here, marked out for that recovery operation. You see on your screen now the mission ops team eager at the edge of their seats for that first call out of Earth atmospheric entry. Very exciting moment coming up in just a few seconds here. We're about 20 seconds away. You see the team at Lockheed now, all standing ready on the edge of their seats. This team, I'll remind you, just a few hours ago, gave that command to release the SRC on this long journey. It's been on its own for 4 hours. There's nothing we can do at this point. It's coming in, rain or shine.
EDO milestone. The SRC has entered the Earth's atmosphere. UTTR tracking assets have required.
And here we go. Start your stopwatch right now. We are 13 minutes of entry, descent, and landing. We have that expected milestone of entering into the Earth's atmosphere. We can see the team at Lockheed, and we actually have a visual now. This is from our infrared tracking camera on the WB-57, our high-altitude plane, at about 47,000 feet MSL, mean sea level, getting a great view of that SRC heating up as it enters into Earth's atmosphere. The punishing deceleration that spacecraft, that SRC is experiencing right now, as it comes in at about 27,650 miles an hour. You can see it glowing brightly in the sky. And in just a few moments, we're going to reach peak heating and peak deceleration. That's at 32 G-forces, punishing G-force on our SRC, a phenomenal view of that streaking SRC coming in across the sky. At this point, we've entered in over San Francisco, California, and are very quickly going to be approaching the Utah test and training range just a little bit further to the east. Entry was at
EDO milestone. SRC is experiencing maximum heating and maximum deceleration.
So you just heard right there, we're experiencing that 5,000 degree Fahrenheit maximum heating, burning, scalding hot on that heat shield that is protecting our sample within, and maximum deceleration that is at 32 G-force, punishing deceleration from Earth's atmosphere, the drag forces that are acting on that SRC. Once again, as I mentioned, that sample is safe and sound within that SRC, that sample return capsule, as it comes in, burning through Earth's atmosphere. You can see our high-altitude plane searching for that SRC. You can see it faintly on your screen there. Our next milestone, we'll be expecting that drogue parachute deployment. That'll be at about 102,300 feet altitude. And as I mentioned before, that will stabilize our descent and slow us from hypersonic to subsonic speeds as we continue to target the Utah test and training range.
Expected EDO milestone. SRC commands drogue parachute deploy.
So we heard that command to deploy the drogue parachute. Waiting to see that visual confirmation, but that is at 102,300 feet. And a side note, at this time, 8:44 a.m. Mountain Time, the OSIRIS Apex spacecraft is at its closest approach to Earth. That will be on to its extended mission, visiting the asteroid Apophis in the year 2029, continuing this incredible mission at another world. And in just a few moments, we should enter into special use airspace at approximately 8:46 a.m. That's going to be at 10 miles off the deck here at Utah Test and Training Range. You can still see that SRC on your screen very faintly in the distance. Still quite warm, that fireball that literally was a ball of plasma just a few moments ago when it first entered into the Earth's atmosphere. That SRC is nearly 3 feet wide, 1.6 feet tall. It's a small object, so quite a challenge to track this as it comes searing into Earth's atmosphere. And in just a few moments, we should be entering into special use airspace. This area was specifically chosen for this mission. It's a wide open, vast desert space, relatively flat, perfect to land this sample today. We did, as I mentioned, have a couple days of rain here leading up to this event, so the ground is a little bit soft. You can see our SRC. Streaking in. This is from our high altitude cam. Our next milestone, we should be expecting main parachute deployment at around 8:49 a.m. Mountain Time. That will be at around 5,000 feet elevation. We continue to track with our high altitude camera here. As I mentioned, that sample is thermally isolated within that SRC, a very complex labyrinth network of piping and tubing leading into that sample canister within, that just a few years ago was on the other side of the solar system from us sampling an asteroid Bennu. The team has incredible precision on this mission as well. Just a few days ago, on the 17th of September, they did their final trajectory correction maneuver, TCM-12. This corrected our velocity by 3 millimeters per second. We see
PDL milestone. We have confirmed parachute deployment.
Wow. And after an exhilarating streak across Earth's atmosphere, we have parachute deployment. You can see just a sigh of relief from the team. I can hear some applause here. There is that orange creamsicle colored parachute, just a delight, a sweet delight to see in our sky here over the Utah Test and Training Range. A phenomenal view, just wonderful to see that deployment. That is at around 5,000 feet elevation above the Utah Test and Training Range. And now this is like a marathon runner savoring that last lap here as we approach the finish, that landing in the Utah Test and Training Range. Wonderful to see that. We continue to track. This is with our high altitude camera still, that WB-57. And we should have a great view from here on the ground. We've got a variety of different tracking assets. And you saw Sophia out at the edge of that ellipse watching from Wig Mountain. The team there could potentially have a wonderful view momentarily as well. We'll continue to descend. Our next altitude descent will be at about 4,000 feet. Just a few minutes away from getting that sample from the other side of the solar system, from the surface of asteroid Bennu at sample site Nightingale to the rugged terrain of the Utah Test and Training Range. It looks like winds are relatively low. Not a lot of rocking back and forth. Those parachutes seem to be perfectly smooth coming down, that parachute there. Continuing to descend, the slight little bit of tilt back and forth of our SRC as it comes to its resting velocity of 11 miles per hour as it makes that final descent. That parachute deployment was given internally by the spacecraft. All of what you're seeing now is autonomous on board that SRC. And once that successfully lands, the teams will begin the next crucial phase of this mission, the sample recovery operations. They've been rehearsing for this moment for months, literally years, really, leading up to this key moment, and are ready to begin those operations to get that SRC into our portable clean room here and extract that sample canister within. According to my watch, we're about 5 minutes away from landing with our SRC. And as we heard a few moments ago, helicopters 1 and 2 are already staged and ready to begin those recovery operations just as soon as we have confirmation of touchdown. This is a variable clock, so this could be a little bit faster, a little bit slower as we get closer in. This wind speed here is a variable that is quite hard to predict, especially once you're high up in the atmosphere. We did release a weather balloon earlier on this afternoon, or earlier on this morning rather, to get a profile of our atmospheric conditions. The team puts those into various models as they prepare for this key moment. But once again, they are a little bit hard to predict, a little bit of variability, so we may kind of bounce around a little bit on that predicted OSIRIS-REx sample return capsule touchdown time. The ground really closing in now on that SRC.
PDL milestone. Hilo 1 has visual on the SRC below the chute.
That is phenomenal. Let's see that view here from that first helicopter. They've got visual on the sample return capsule under parachute, that orange creamsicle colored parachute, really bright in the morning light over the Utah Test and Training Range. A great view of the SRC we can have now from our helicopter as it continues to make its final descent to the terrain below. And once again, just setting the context for this, when we first hit the top of the atmosphere, we were at 27,650 miles per hour. We are now leisurely decelerating under our orange parachute to 11 miles per hour. incredible amount of deceleration there as Earth's atmosphere really helped us out quite a bit, getting that initial deceleration, our drogue parachute initially stabilizing our descent, and then ultimately that main parachute bringing us home. You can see right in the center of that crosshair, that is the parachute with the SRC dangling beneath. The team on the WB-57 doing
DDL milestone, we have touchdown. I repeat, DDL, SRC has touchdown.
And touchdown of the OSIRIS-REx sample return capsule. A journey of 1 billion miles to asteroid Bennu and back has come to an end, marking America's first sample return mission of its kind and opening a time capsule to our ancient solar system. Unofficial touchdown time, 8:52 a.m. Mountain. And the team can now breathe an immense sigh of relief. We now have the sample return capsule, the SRC, containing pieces of the asteroid Bennu. You see the reaction there just moments ago as they got that sample back on the ground. This is the team at Lockheed celebrating that momentous achievement of getting that sample from the other side of the solar system at asteroid Bennu. When we took that sample, we were over 200 million miles away from us here on Earth. The long journey back, 1.2 billion miles from asteroid Bennu back to here with that sample, has just come to a dramatic close. And a little bit ahead of schedule too. The SRC landing about 3 minutes ahead of when we had originally predicted. It was in a rush to get back here, carrying amazing amount of scientific information within. The team is eager to crack that SRC open, get the sample canister within, and begin the process of understanding the origins of our solar system and potentially the origins of life. We're not in the clear just yet. A key piece of the mission is about to get underway. This is the recovery operation phase. Once the team has officially confirmed the exact touchdown location, they'll be flying out on 4 separate helicopters and will operate much like a Formula One pit crew, if you will, to recover the SRC, take environmental samples at the landing zone, the LZ. Everyone has a role to play. It's going to be simultaneous action as they get that SRC recovered and begin to do an environmental safety sweep, collecting samples along the way. You see our mission ops team just next door. I once again remind you that the sample canister itself is not actually going to be opened here at Dugway. The next phase of the operation is simply to get that SRC into the portable clean room that has been specifically set up for this recovery operation. The team will then remove the heat shield protecting the SRC and its precious cargo within the entire descent through the entry, descent, and landing, remove the back shell, and then extract the sample canister within the tag SIM that just a few years ago collected pieces from the asteroid Bennu. Today, the goal is to get the sample canister.
Recovery operations, helicopters 3 and 4 are leaving rig for the landing ellipse.
You see some big smiles from the team there. They are getting those helicopters out to the landing ellipse now to begin those recovery operations. The first person to approach the SRC is Stu Wiley, our on-scene commander. You see the helicopter, the last of them, taking off from the Wig Mountain just at the edge of that landing ellipse. These helicopters will have a trip out to find that exact touchdown location of the SRC and begin those recovery operations. Stu Wiley, our on-scene commander, will be the first person to approach that SRC. He'll do an environmental safety sweep, checking for unexploded ordnances. As he mentioned in his interview earlier with Sophia, he understands this range. He's worked here for a number of years. He will brief the team on any possible dangers that would be presented to them as they begin those recovery operations. And then a team member from Lockheed Martin will begin to take gas and thermal readings once the area is safe of that SRC to determine whether or not it is at safe operational levels for the rest of the team to begin the recovery operations. As I mentioned, this is going to be simultaneous action. The team has prepared. They're all going to be wearing these bright white UV shirts, sample recovery shirts. And you'll see them walking out to that sample in just a few moments here once those helicopters land. A great view once again from our high altitude plane. You can see the parachute there next to our SRC. There is a possibility that there could be unexploded ordnances from that parachute. There is a mortar inside that is to fire to disconnect the parachute from the main SRC to help it come to a final rest. It's a bit challenging to see from this perspective, but there could be some potential roll marks or skid marks as that SRC came to a rest on the rugged desert surface below. As I mentioned, we did have a bit of precipitation here the other day, so that should make for a nice soft surface for that SRC, so it probably had a nice clean landing there. The team will assess as they get out there and check exactly how our conditions are for the SRC and the surrounding area. You heard Stu mentioning the team might need to wear some boots. The operations could get a little bit slippery as they begin to recover that sample. And this is a pristine sample from the ancient solar system and could hold the clues to how everything around us came to be, from the formation of the planets to the origins of life here on Earth. Needless to say, this is precious cargo, and the recovery team is fully aware of the gravity of the situation and the importance of what they're about to do today with these recovery operations. You can see it looks like our parachute has come to a stable rest. The winds were pretty low today, so it looks like it is not billowing at all. It is almost perfectly flat, at least from this perspective, on that desert terrain. And throughout all these operations, the crew member safety is paramount. So you'll see the team probably huddle up a couple times as they begin these recovery operations to make sure that everything is safe and continues to be nominal as they make their initial safety sweep. All of this recovery should be a very quick process, usually. They've rehearsed for this again for months. They've been out here all summer really rehearsing for this moment. They did a drop test last month. They've also had numerous rehearsals actually practicing containing that SRC, getting it on a sample carrying fixture.
Recovery operations, WV has located the parachute on the ground.
You just heard that confirmation from that high altitude plane locating that parachute on the ground. This location info will be relayed to our team members aboard those helicopters as they begin their approach out to the landing zone. We do have that confirmation from the high altitude plane, as you just heard. We're still working to get confirmation from our NASA helicopter. It is on its way out to that landing zone as we speak, so we should hopefully have that view up in just a few moments. You continue to see our team just next door, the mission operations team, all looking at that high altitude view. Right in the middle there, just pointing around with the UV white shirt, is Rich Witherspoon from Lockheed Martin. He has been leading a lot of these operations for the past couple months. He's been preparing the team for this exact moment and really has been a great leader helping us get ready for these recovery operations. Yeah, so this ellipse here, this landing zone, is a quite large setup here, and this was chosen intentionally for this mission. It's about 37 miles by 9 miles total, this landing ellipse, out in the Utah Test and Training Range here in Dugway, Utah. This is an enormous facility. As you heard earlier, it's about the size of Rhode Island, all in all, this whole facility. It's relatively flat, very smooth terrain, this desert surface. So it's perfect for bringing something back and having that nice, safe landing on the desert surface. Just a few years ago, the OSIRIS-REx spacecraft back in 2020 made its tag attempt, the touch and go attempt to actually collect the sample that has now landed in this desert. When it did that, it was only at the surface for just a couple seconds, descending at a speed about 11 centimeters per second, just a little bit faster than a baby that is crawling. It's a very slow pace, but they're able to successfully get that sample and bring it from the edge of our solar system back to us here at that Utah Test and Training Range. You can see our full screen view here of that high altitude view, looking at the parachute at rest on the surface of the desert. This is at the Utah Test and Training Range. It's a wide open expanse here, and the team has this positional info, and they'll be relaying that to our helicopter teams to begin those recovery operations. And what you'll see in a couple of seconds here, the recovery team, the recovery crews are responsible for securing the sample return capsule, the landing site around it, and helicoptering the SRC to a portable clean room that's located just next door here on the range. And just a little bit later on, it's going to be attached to a 100-foot long line beneath one of the helicopters, and then will actually be flown to the clean room. This was determined to be the best possible way to transport that SRC safely and efficiently, to get it on a nitrogen purge and maintain the pristine nature of the sample within. As I mentioned, this is an enormous ellipse, 37 by 9 miles. It's a large expanse to cover by car. It's a very bumpy ride out there as you kind of start to make your approach across this rugged terrain. With the helicopters, it will be approximately a 20-minute flight back with that SRC. They take it at a nice slow pace, effectively parading the SRC around, just giving it its last big moment as it is served its purpose officially at this point of getting that sample canister safely here to Earth. Once we actually land and begin those recovery operations, you'll see a lot of team members out beginning to take samples, both air and also soil samples from around the area. These are places of interest for the sample curation team that will actually open up the sample canister in the coming days down at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. They have a phenomenal sample curation facility there, and these samples from asteroid Bennu will join a historic collection of other asteroid materials, including samples from the Apollo mission, samples from both the Stardust and Genesis missions, as well as Antarctic meteorites that were collected by our scientists. In the coming days, we'll actually know exactly how much sample we got back from Bennu. The original mission requirement was 60 grams of pristine sample from the asteroid surface. Based on some very clever engineering, the team believes that they have potentially 250 grams, or 6 times that mission requirement, inside. And so we just heard that unofficial touchdown time was at 8:52 a.m. Mountain Time here at the Utah Test and Training Range in Dugway, Utah. If you're just joining us, you see that view right now from one of our high-altitude planes observing our touchdown location. On your screen, just above that crosshair, is the orange creamsicle-colored parachute that brought us the last part of our journey down to the surface of the Earth. You heard from Jim earlier that main parachute is about 24 feet across. Fairly large parachute that helped us decelerate on our last leg of the journey. And so we just heard a confirmation actually that the main parachute deployed much higher than was originally anticipated. It was originally supposed to deploy at about 5,000 feet elevation, but it actually deployed at around 20,000 feet, so much higher up. So that would explain our kind of earlier touchdown time than expected here. Still has touchdown on the Utah Test and Training Range. Team members continue to fly out to this location aboard helicopters. As I mentioned, there are 4 recovery helicopters in total. The mission operations team is continuing to monitor the situation. They're the ones who are relaying us that info about that high parachute deployment, that 20,000 foot parachute deployment. They're going to be assessing the situation from their end here, relaying any possible info over to our recovery teams as they begin to make their trip out to our SRC. One of the first goals once the team gets out there is to safe and stow the parachute. Begin to mark places of interest, as I mentioned, for that curation team to begin sampling. This is all a very well-coordinated machine, very well-oiled machine that operates in tandem. They've rehearsed extensively for this moment. So we just heard from the team in that mission operations room that they have visual of the parachute, that orange parachute that you saw on your screen moments ago, but we do not yet have visual confirmation of the SRC itself. The team is continuing to survey the region, looking for that sample return capsule.
Recovery operations. Kilos 1 and 2 are in the area of the landing site and are in a search operation.
So you just heard that call out from Tim Preiser, who you see on your screen there from the mission operations room. He just announced that Helos 1 and 2 are now at that landing site. They're pointing out something on the screen. I see some smiles. It seems like we might have potentially some more information on that SRC in the coming moments. Helos 1 and 2 will be surveying this region, looking for both that SRC and also eyeing up the region, looking at that parachute that was deployed.
Recovery operations. All of the ground supporting vehicles have left rig and are in pursuit of the landing zone.
So some more team members are going to be heading out to that landing zone as well in support of those 4 helicopters that will be the main group recovering that sample. The main helicopter will be actually attaching that sample return capsule once the team has it located and ready to prepare for recovery operations. They will load that on long line. You can see once again, some team members pointing at items on the screen here. We'll hopefully get confirmation in the coming minutes of that SRC location. Tim Preiser pointing at the screen now, wondering if he has any more information for us on where that sample return capsule location would be. We do have visual confirmation of that parachute, as I mentioned. Rich Witherspoon radioing out to the team. And now we have a view from our helicopter of the landing location. You can see the sample return capsule dead center on your screen, that kind of dark gray black object right there. And then just to the right of it, a little bit below, is our parachute. It appears to be resting on the surface. We're getting a zoom in now from our NASA helicopter. And you can see now the SRC. At last, we have a visual of it on the surface of the Utah Test and Training Range. I'm sure that is a pleasant sight for the team to see.
Recovery operations. Kilo 2 has visual on the SRC. I repeat, SRC has been located.
And we have visual on that SRC. It appears that the parachute has also disconnected. It's a little bit off from that SRC, disconnecting from the back shell. The SRC appears to be resting on its nose, that heat shield that protected it the whole way down through that entry, descent, and landing. Lockheed is celebrating that moment. I'm sure they're breathing another sigh of relief here. It's been a wild morning for everyone involved. They've been up since the crack of dawn, just a little bit further north from us in Waterton, Colorado. They gave the go command to actually release that SRC that you see on your screen right there from the OSIRIS-REx spacecraft about 4 hours ago. It then ventured entirely on its own and now sits on its own for us here in the Utah Test and Training Range. So now that we have visual, the teams should be able to begin the recovery operations in just a few moments. As I mentioned, that first person on scene will be the on-scene commander, Stu Wiley. He'll be doing an environmental sweep. We're getting a nice close-up view. You can see the parachute disconnected. You can see some of the wiring of it there, just a little bit off the edge of our SRC. The SRC looks quite charred up from that entry in. That was expected, as we heated up to temperatures over 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit upon entry into Earth's atmosphere. You can see a great visual of some of that rugged terrain out there. Just a sweeping expanse, very panoramic terrain at the Utah Test and Training Range. It's a great location for us to land this sample. The team looking a lot more relieved now that we actually have visual. And we should be able to begin those recovery operations shortly. Inside that sample return capsule are pieces of the asteroid Bennu. We'll be getting access to those samples in just a few days and actually seeing exactly what we got from the asteroid regolith. This mission continues to amaze me and everyone involved here. The engineering is ingenious for this mission, getting us with a robotic explorer to the edge of the solar system, collecting that sample, safely stowing it, and then actually transporting it back here to Earth for us to open up and analyze. The surface today was probably a little bit soft, so it looks like it's resting a little bit far off the actual desert. It doesn't appear to have dug in too much with that nose cone from the heat shield. You are here with us as we witness this historic moment. It's the first time the United States has delivered samples from an asteroid to Earth, and these samples will be analyzed for decades to come in laboratories around the world. And there is landing of our first helicopter at the site. Appears to have a nice soft landing. We're just probably a couple hundred feet.
Recovery operations. Helo 1 has landed at the recovery site.
So our first helicopter, you just heard confirmation, and you can see visual confirmation of that landing. We're maybe about 100, 200 feet away, landing away from that sample. So little.
Bom, pessoal, vocês que estão online, quero agradecer mais uma vez pela participação. Eu estou tirando agora porque eu estava acompanhando também, né, no YouTube. Cadê? Deixa eu só ajustar aqui. Eu estava acompanhando no YouTube e fui retomar o início, né, para ouvir melhor. E eles já encerraram, né? Encerraram faz 40 minutos. E pelo que eu entendi aqui, ficou mantido para 90 segundos. Não deu para ainda entender bem, tenho que ouvir com mais cuidado, mas foi isso mesmo, 90 segundos, né? E aí a gente precisa saber por quê, qual foi o motivo que eles alegaram, por que eles decidiram. Então, a gente vai conversar sobre isso, tá? Eu ia falar hoje, agora à tarde, mas eu vou editar o vídeo, vou baixar esse vídeo, vou editar, colocar uma legendazinha para a gente fazer uma análise comentada. Então, possivelmente a gente faz isso à noite, tá legal? Eu não sei quantos estão online, então só para contextualizar para vocês. Ok, só para contextualizar para vocês, então o relógio ele foi mantido, tá certo? Para quem não conhece, o relógio do Juízo Final, ele é uma iniciativa simbólica, né? No sentido de mostrar... Só um instante, pessoal. Ui, Deus, saúde. Espirrando ao vivo aí, ó. Só para mostrar como é que está a situação, como é que a humanidade está cuidando do planeta e os riscos que tem com relação a essas ações da humanidade do planeta. Então, a humanidade, ela construiu tecnologias capazes de aniquilar a vida terrestre, isso é uma evidência, né? E esse relógio, ele coloca justamente essa possibilidade de analisar a situação de risco. Exemplos de investimento nessa linha, bomba atômica, que teve sua invenção detalhada recentemente num filme Oppenheimer. Eu não sei se vocês assistiram esse filme, muito bom, do diretor Christopher Nolan. As guerras de armamento nuclear, e aí é uma coisa que eu vou rever o vídeo para ver, colocar a legenda para entender por que eles desconsideraram a questão da situação de Israel, né, e a guerra que nós temos ali no Oriente Médio. Então, o Doomsday, que é Clock, né, o relógio do Juízo Final, ele busca calcular o impacto de toda essa interferência no planeta, fazendo uma estimativa de quanto tempo ainda a gente tem com relação a catástrofes precedentes, certo? Em 2023, esse relógio ele foi ajustado para 90 segundos, nós tínhamos aí a guerra na Rússia, e houve, né, por conta da guerra, uma alegação justamente com relação a esta situação que estava na Rússia. Aí, hoje, teve a reunião, tá certo? E nessa reunião, eles colocaram a manutenção, né, dos 90 segundos, tá certo? Deixa eu só dar um alô aqui. Então, eles colocaram essa manutenção dos 90 segundos, tá certo? E a gente vai comentar a respeito mais tarde. Eu queria lembrar a vocês que... Cadê? Deixa eu ser... Pronto, então é isso mesmo, tá certo? Esse relógio é um relógio simbólico, ele foi desenvolvido aí pelos cientistas e ele busca contextualizar o cenário geopolítico mundial, e nós sabemos aí que o principal risco está relacionado à questão de guerra nuclear, por isso que está no canal A Terra e seus Sinais. Os cientistas por trás do relógio do Juízo Final, eles querem incentivar as pessoas e instituições a agir e manter, né, informadas sobre o mundo em que vivem, né? Quando foi lançado em agosto de 1945, foi em decorrência das bombas nucleares, tá certo? Então, é uma ação que a dinâmica dela é voltada para ouvir os conselheiros e em reunião colegiada eles decidem o resultado. Então é isso, tá bom? Mais tarde a gente conversa. Um abraço para todos e até mais. Tchau.